Welcome to Emtron Training Part 12. In this training tutorial, we're going to be taking a look at setting up our ignition configuration details. This is going to be accounting for what type of ignition system we have installed onto our vehicle, whether it's going to be a CDI or it's going to be an inductive coil, whether it's going to be a waste spark, direct fire, or distributed type of ignition configuration. We're going to be learning how to program our coil dwell in for an inductive style coil in our training tutorial as well. So we have a lot of things to cover. Let's jump in so we can check out setting up our ignition configuration details. Okay, so let's get started. We're going to be taking a look at programming our ignition system details within our Emtron. Now, whether we're working with a CDI box or an inductive style coil, we need to recognize and understand the different types of ignitions and then how to program them properly within our Emtron. There's a whole lot of details that we need to cover and some terminology you might not be familiar with. So we're going to be going through the basics here in this tutorial and making sure you understand things from scratch and going through and making sure all the details are covered so that the ignition system is going to be controlled properly and there's no surprises when you fire up your engine. First thing we need to do is actually take a look from moving from our tuning and go into config. We're going to go here across from engine setup into ignition. And our drop down here we have ignition main, ignition channel setup, dwell setup, dwell table 1, dwell offset, as well as ignition test. We're going to look in our various different windows we have to program in here and talk about what each represent and how to go through and set it up based on the engine you're working with. Let's first start off in ignition main, and we're going to go through our different options that we have here. Now under ignition main, we have our ignition mode. Ignition mode is going to be telling the Emtron what it's going to be controlling in terms of the coil configuration. This is important because there's variations that we'll find within controlling engines. Now we'll find that we have our list right here: direct fire, wasted spark, distributor, twin distributor, direct fire, trailing spark, wasted spark, trailing spark, and then CDI 8. Let's go through and talk about each of these individually and what they represent and why one is an advantage over the other. And most of the time, if we're working from our top of our list here, direct fire, that's the most ideal. And then we'll work our way down because they get less ideal as we go down further and further in the list. Now, it's starting off here in this particular ignition mode set up on wasted spark. I'm going to change it to direct fire, so we'll start there and we'll work our way down the list. So I'm going to go in here and just type a 1. We can see that's going to designate here direct fire. So we're going to enter 1, enter, and that changes it to direct fire. Now, direct fire is going to be assuming you have a coil per cylinder, and each coil is wired to a coil injector, a coil driver right from the Emtron. So meaning we're firing one coil per cylinder, and we're doing that in the firing order of the engine. Now the direct fire is having the huge advantage here because it's firing once within the auto cycle, so it's allowed to charge, discharge, and then charge again. It has ample time for the coil to actually cool down. It's not going to be overheating and overrunning the coil. Now as a result, we can run a little bit hotter spark and we'll have the engine perform a little bit more optimally. So we'll get a little bit better spark energy and have the coils run cooler. And long term, that's good because the coil will last longer. So the direct fire is going to be what we'd like to choose. And again, one coil per cylinder, and we've wired it up using one of the coil and drivers. And we have, if we have a 4-cylinder engine, we have 4 coils. We'd have 4 coil drivers tied up. We'd have one coil wired to each coil driver, and then we designate where that coil driver, in terms of the output, was going to be to the cylinder, and then knowing the firing order, the Emtron can figure out where to fire things. So the direct fire is going to be the best option that we have here. The next best option would be wasted spark, and that's going to be here. If I enter a value of 2 and click enter, that'll change things to wasted spark. Wasted spark can be configured in a couple different ways. We can find that we could use one coil driver output to control 2 coils, or we can use multiple different coil outputs. So let's say we have a coil per cylinder and we have the coil wired directly into the driver. So at a 1-to-1, we can virtually pair things so that 2 coils are fired at the same time within the auto cycle. One coil will be fired when it's supposed to within the compression stroke. The other coil will be fired on the exhaust stroke. So a couple different ways it can be wired and configured. Wasted spark is very common on older type of engines. There's really no reason if you're building a harness from scratch and doing a project from scratch that you would be running a wasted spark configuration. We almost always want to run direct fire. Now,
the disadvantage.
Thanks for checking out our teaser clip. If you want to see the rest of this video and more than 500 hours of current EFI training we have to offer, make sure you click right here. If you want to go and check out more teaser clips from this training course, click here. And you don't want to miss any of the videos we're going to be releasing on this channel, so make sure you subscribe and click here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.